Hello. Hello. Thanks for joining us at this Grown-Up Stories panel, and thanks for joining us at the 15th Annual Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo. Since 2010, MICE has grown into the largest independent comic show in New England. So thank all of you for making this happen, and also for coming to this very special conversation. I'm Dan Mazur, co-founder and programming director of MICE. Today's moderator was to be Heide Solbrig, who is sadly under the weather today. So I am going to step in to moderate this panel, which I'm not very happy to do. Hopefully I'll be well organized, even though I had to pick it up at the last minute. But I will say that I've been working on this panel from the beginning, so it's a topic that I feel very close to. And what is the topic exactly? That's something we will be trying to figure out with the panelists as we go along. But basically, comics in America have been becoming, and graphic novels especially, been becoming more widely read over the last couple of decades, and we've all been very happy to see this happen. But one of the things that's happened within that phenomenon is a huge explosion in readership and attention, really, for graphic novels for younger readers. Graphic novels for younger readers, and to the extent that graphic novel for adult readers have gotten a lot of attention, which clearly some of them have, they have tended to be in certain genres, memoir, nonfiction, and to some extent science fiction, fantasy, those kinds of genres. So there's this type of comic that I've kept waiting to have its moment and its shooting star, and how to define that, because it's more, what is the word for it? We were going to call it adult comics, but then everyone would think it would be porn, and some of it is, but not all of it. And so comics that are for adult readers, fiction, and not in one of those kind of comics genres like science fiction, fantasy, and of course nothing against, we all love those genres, but I can't help sounding derisive when I say not one of those. And I think finally the expression that might sum up what I'm trying to get at here, which is an expression that I really don't like to use, is literary comics. Because I don't like it, because comics are visual, but it seems to come closest. So we're going to talk more about what that all means. But before doing that, let us go through and introduce our four great panelists in the order of slides that Heide prepared. Teddie Bernard. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, which is not what we usually do, but I don't have their bios.
Hi, I'm Teddie Bernard. My pronouns are they and he. I'm a cartoonist. I'm based in Chicago. Trying to think of what else I should say about myself. A lot of my work is based on queer history, but also kind of pulp genres like noir, and kind of mixing those into something that I feel like I wish I had been able to read as I was growing up, and now too as well. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's a pretty good summary of me. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll get more into all of that when we're in the meat of the discussion. So here are some images from Teddie's work, and now we move to Liam Donnelly.
Hi, I'm Liam. My pronouns are he, him. I'm based in Queens. I make what I like to refer to as sad gay comics, because I feel like it's sort of like a more succinct and sort of tongue-in-cheek way of explaining the comics I do, which are just like slice of life, like queer / romancy comics. Occasionally they get a little bit spicy, some BDSM, but for the most part, it's just about like queer 20-somethings living their lives, and yeah, and I make that work because I don't really see a lot of it. And yeah, that's me. I make sad gay comics.
Thank you. And next is Dave Ortega.
Hello, I'm Dave Ortega, and I make comics. I put out a graphic novel about my grandmother called Dias de Consuelo and her early life in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. Radiator Comics put out the graphic novel version of that. It was originally serialized over 6 issues. My current project is called Hacienda, and it is short fiction stories that have elements of mystery, sci-fi, horror, as well as other media such as musicals. My latest one has a comic version of a musical being developed. So I'm having a lot of fun. I'm looking to a lot of series that cartoonists have put out, like Dan Clow's 8 Ball and the ongoing Love and Rocket series by Los Bros Hernandez. So I'm taking inspiration from all of that as I put out these individual issues.
And Cris Siqueira.
So my name is pronounced Siqueira, the last name, but it's at Crisciqueira. It has been shown. That's the
Cris is
and
wrong.
there's no age,
There's
but
no
it's
age
okay.
in
It doesn't matter. I should have changed my name to Cicada, because that's how you pronounce it, Siqueira, like
Is
the
the
bug.
last name misspelled there?
That one is good.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one.
Sorry about that.
I
Yeah.
didn't understand the assignment.
Now it's right.
Yeah, there, because I
'Cause
made
you
that
did
right. This is my life. It's like, honestly, I should have changed it. When you get citizenship, you have a chance to change it. I should have done it, but I didn't understand the assignment of the slides. So I'm just gonna say the drawings that are mine. I've been making comics. I made comics very briefly in my 20s, and then I came back to doing comics. I have a history in the sideshow. Can you go back to the first one, Dave? Sorry, because I just wanna say my drawings are only the ones on top. The ones on the bottom are from other artists, and that is the sideshow attraction that inspires those drawings, and it's the name of my band too. And that's me in the sideshow attraction. There's my talker over there. I got 2 carnies in this room, so we're doing very well so far. And ballyhoo. But yeah, so this is like, I draw from my experience in the circus. The comic is called Siqueira Comics because of my last name. And I'm writing a long form graphic novel called May You Get What You Want. So this is the comics I used to do. This is a comic about me convincing John Cusack to marry me so I could get a green card. And that one I made in my 20s, that did not come to fruition, unfortunately. I did convince another person to marry me. And I did get a green card, but not John Cusack, not John Cusack. Great guy, love him very much, but not John Cusack. And so that's the new comic that I'm doing now. And I have it on my table, and it's a long form, so this is a big challenge. I've been reading comics all my life, a big fan of Love and Rockets, big fan of all of that. I've been a journalist, comics journalist, so I've been always comics adjacent. And, sorry, I'm gonna stop. And I'll stop now. I used to have a store. The whole reason I did this way is because, just to say, comics is a lifelong theme for me. I had a very tiny store that sold zines and demo tapes, the 90s, called Vida Loca, and now I have a store in Milwaukee called Lion's Tooth, and they're kind of like the same thing, like many years later doing the same thing. We have a comic school for kids, and we have a residency, and just like, because we're talking to people who are doing comics, and I was imagining a lot of the people here would be younger, and we're gonna talk a lot about the market and how the market is cruel and everything, but it's also the greatest source of joy in my life. So I just wanted to exemplify that. I'll shut up now, sorry.
Thanks. No, you won't shut up yet, because now I'm just going to go back through in reverse order and get a little more in-depth talk about the work that sort of brings you here. And I have to switch over come on, to the PDF here, so because we don't have good slides of this. So tell us more about May You Get What You Want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a comic that, so I wanted to do, make a story, and I'm doing it exactly. I have a frustration of never been able to do a movie. And when so I wanted to do a fiction story. My instinct is always to go to memoir and go to personal, but I wanted to make a straight up fiction story because I did a documentary only. And I wanted to see if I was able to do that. Am I able to tell a story that is compelling and to create characters that people identify with? So this is that story. I couldn't help but make it a little bit weird. It's this universe in which people, there's a wave of disinformation that people start believing that if they change their lines in their hands, they can control their destiny. So if you want a longer life, you can get a tattoo and get it. There's people doing hand exercises. There's people cutting themselves, to get what do you call it? Scars that are good luck scars. And it's about our collective stupidity that these times that we're living right now, where you have a storm and people go, oh, they absolutely can control the weather, all this stuff so it's a lot about internet culture and my frustration with that. My character is also Brazilian, living in Milwaukee, comes from the same city that I do, so it's a little bit of a revenge comic in the sense that I put all the impolite things that people have ever said to me, so glad your English is so great. It's better than my Portuguese. It better be. I studied all my life. I've been living here for 20 years. Wouldn't that be weird if it wasn't so? So that kind. And just with sense of humor, dealing with this, our world and how my life is. So that's it.
Cool. Thank you. Now I got to get back to our slideshow, and we'll go up. And Dave, you want to talk about Hacienda? Sure. And the story. Maybe you want to talk about I love the idea of musical comics.
Yeah.
But you can talk about any of them you want.
Yeah. So the project came about because I actually wrote a story called Hacienda about a decade ago and submitted it to an online comic contest that Frank Santoro was running, and that was fun, and it won, and yay! And I always knew that I wanted to do something with that story, and so I filed that away in the back of my head for 10 years, and then I redrew the entire thing because it was drawn in a style that I wasn't a big fan of, and styles change, and that's perfectly fine, and so I redrew the whole thing. And what I want to do with this is I want to play with kind of how media controls. Well, I also work in video as well. I worked at a film archive for 12 years, and then I worked in community media / public access, which was amazing, for 3 years. And so I have a lot of experience with video editing and film production. And I was really attuned to the manipulative ways that that medium kind of controls information and point of view. And so I wanted to do something with that in comics. And so I have a reality TV set where one thing is going on, you see the behind the scenes editors, and then you also see what actually happened 100 years ago. And it was really important to me not to have 100 years ago, and then, so no control, none of the stuff that you might get in captions to direct the reader. Yeah. I removed all of that so that the reader's a little confused maybe at first, but then they're forced to guide themselves to figure out what's going on. And then so the first issue focused on a sort of alleged haunting going on in an hacienda in Mexico, and the reality TV show that's filming this, and then the truth of what actually happened. The second issue is about a reality TV show, like a Love Island type thing, and then somebody disappears, and And then there's also this mystery where the journalists investigate the disappearance, and then they stumble across this other like film production, abandoned film production that was going on nearby. And then the third issue is about a musical about the Mexican Revolution that is being staged, and then the person in charge, the director, his ex comes back into the scene, and that creates a series of events, a complicated series of events. So I'm just having fun with it. Again, the inspiration, comes from all these other places in comics history. Daniel Clowes had 18 issues of 8 Ball, and Love and Rockets is still going. So like, I just want to keep going with it, and the main issue with me is just time, and where to find that time to work on it.
I just want to point out the quote that you put from the Comics Journal. That's pretty good. Comic book writing doesn't get much smarter than this. The Comics Journal.
Yeah, when you get a quote like that from the Comics Journal, you have to do something with it. So,
Do you have it tattooed anywhere? Okay.
Only my dentist will tell.
Okay, and Liam, tell us about your ongoing works.
Yeah, so this is these are scenes from my series, Thanks for Asking. The title for Thanks for Asking is sort of a riff off of, so I did a previous comic called How Are You Holding Up? Which is about Murray, who has the blue streak in his hair going through the immediate aftermath of a breakup, and Thanks for Asking is the follow-up to How Are You Holding Up? Because I'm hilarious. How Are You Holding Up was loosely sort of based off of this breakup that I was going through in 2019, right before COVID, and it sort of just ends with him sort of like allegedly coming to terms with it. And then I was like, but there's more to the story. There's after the breakup, when you're still sad, but also really fucking horny. And it's sort of just about Murray avoiding dealing with his sadness by having lots of kinky sex. And avoiding talking about and dealing with his feelings. But Thanks for Asking is also an ensemble, and I'm sort of looking at the different ways that we sort of avoid intimacy, and I was really interested in this idea of how him having a lot of physical intimacy with people was his way of avoiding emotional intimacy. And then we have his friend Peter here, who is also going through a breakup, who is doing the opposite and avoiding physical intimacy. And the second issue, I have 2 issues out so far. So the first issue is about Murray. The second issue is from Peter's point of view. And the third issue is going to be about, from this character Tiffany's point of view, who is not pictured anywhere in these scenes because she doesn't show up in the first issue. And it's going to be about how she avoids dealing with her relationship by focusing on everyone else's problems in their relationships. And yeah, I'm really interested. I feel like queer narratives are still really limited, and I'm really interested in grounded, reality-based ones that take queer relationships very seriously, and then in a more I'm also just in terms of Murray having a lot of kinky sex, I feel like media depictions of BDSM and kink are always about how transgressive those acts are and how weird. It's you look at 50 Shades of Grey and it's just oh man, she's doing something crazy. But a lot of kink is just awkwardly putting on gear or getting untied from the bed for 20 minutes because you tied the knot too quickly, or the story I love to tell is one time I was at Folsom and my friend was talking to this daddy-son couple, not that they were actually dad and son, but that was their dynamic, and they were trying to get him to hook up with them, and they were we have a heating pole that you would love to be tied to, and they just talk about it super casually, and it's just it's not a big deal, and I'm really interested in seeing that because I've never really seen that before.
Okay, just had to go back to this first page for a second. Thank you, Liam. Teddie, your turn.
Yeah, so this is a bunch of queer narratives that are not very grounded. I mean, it is, there's some sort of grounding, but I'm really interested in, again, like leaning into genre, right? So there's kind of this central murder mystery that is developing, right? This is the first part of it developing, and we haven't really gotten to the investigation part of it yet, right? But there's a lot of like, oh, on top of that, also, am I gay? Everyone thinks I'm gay, but also I'm trying to be really like writing under a pen name and super covert. So I'm really interested in the 1950s as a concept because of this kind of rise in conservatism and how it parallels, unfortunately, our contemporary day way too much. And so, right, like it's this kind of very elaborate story, but I want there to be a heart that really relates to the present day, right? These are two of the characters. Aretta's kind of our protagonist, and Marjorie is totally lying to herself and is married to a man, and it's not going well. And like, what does that say about like the rise of kind of like trad wives, right? Like there's so much that I find very unsettling in our contemporary day that I think writing about through this lens of like mystery fiction, but also thinking about queer history and like what people have gone through before us and how that relates to our present day. And these are a lot of the things that are fueling the story. There's also, as Cris alluded to, an elaborate circus backstory as well, which I find very fun. There's also just things I find fun, right? Like I find like a historical interest in this. Like I found this photo archive of beautiful 1940s circus photographs right outside of Chicago. I was like, okay, well, this is going into my brain forever, right? And so there's, you know, a lot of things that come into it, and it kind of is this collage that I hope at the end of it says something about maybe how we connect with each other and how we get each other through fascism. Like that's the end goal. We're working there, but.
Okay, thank you all. Now, I would like to sort of return to this idea of what is the unifying theme of this panel, and my whole kind of fumbling attempt to define like the comics that we're talking about versus the comics that we're not talking about, and genre, and are you in a genre, are you not in a genre, are there, and just the idea of grown-up stories in comics. So I just want to throw that out and get your response to sort of how I set it up or how you feel about your work in relation to that idea. Kind of, are you writing for adults? Are you thinking about that at all?
I can see a common thread here that it seems like everybody is doing what they want. You know what I mean? Like you're not really worried about market fluctuations. You're not thinking about it in a way of like, this is marketable a certain way. I think it's very interesting, the idea of like issues, like Liam and Dave are doing, which is something that it's such a part of like comics history. And it's, for me, it's really hard because I'm writing one big story that's like closer to what Ballyhoo is, but I kind of want to come to the shows before it's ready. But I also know nobody read issue number 1, so I have to like, so I've been like doing, issue number 1 was 20 pages and issue number 2 was 30, but from the beginning, and then this is like 52 from the beginning. You know, I haven't been able to, it's hard when you print something that you print 100 copies of, in my case, and then, you know, how are people gonna get to the story? You know, so I'm almost like, I'm curious of like the idea of doing like issue-based, because, you know.
Yeah, so with Hacienda, I thought about that, and each issue is standalone, so you don't need to read issue 1 to know the events of issue 2. Issue 3 will be a 2-parter, but that's I want to do that kind of sparingly. I because of that problem is like you just end up selling issue 1.
I know from the store. You know, you just put issue 1 in every one of your comics, and everybody's just gonna buy that. People only want issue 1. Second is like the most recent. So if you have like a sticker that says issue 1 and the year, just put it there, and then that's like 2025, issue 1.
Well, Marvel and DC have been trying to do that for like over a decade now. They just keep relaunching books every 8 fucking issues. But yeah, in terms of like doing, like, yeah, I have similar concerns about my work. I mean, I have like a deal for like issues 1 and 2 where like you can get like, I charge $10 each because like full color printing is really expensive, and obviously like I don't sell enough copies to justify doing a large print run. So anyway, I do it so like you can buy both for $15 instead of $20, and like that sends to get people to buy them. But I also like, I try to make my comics as easily accessible as possible. Like I post them on Instagram, I put them on my website. Like I'm also posting them to Blue Sky. Like I'm just trying to like put them making them available for free, so it's like easy to like catch up or like maybe spark interest. But actually like the main reason I'm doing issues is because like structuring it that way makes it easier for me to like work on it. But like really I am like thinking about it as like a long graphic novel, and like, because like I think I'm planning like 9 issues of Thanks for Asking, and I'm splitting it up to make, because I have a full-time day job, and like it's easier for me to like work on the individual issues than to like to work on like page 1 of 20 rather than page 1 of like 200 and something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to approach Ballyhoo in issues because it's also a graphic novel with all these chapters, and there's also about 9, and instead I'm approaching it with books, and I'm not sure that's just going to be the right decision for me in the long haul, to be fully transparent, but I'm really pleased with having the book, right? So each book is like several of the chapters, and the hope is that if you only have 1 or 2 books and it takes several years for each of them to come out, then it's just like, there it is. But we'll see if that works out. I'm not fully certain yet. And, you know, I think that's also part of making the work that I make is it's, right, like it's the work I'm going to make no matter what. And so if that decision I make ends up making it harder to sell, well, I've given myself that task. Like, I guess I'll go try to sell this if it's going to be harder to sell as books. But I think that's also like the way I'm trying to mitigate the chapters or issues problem for now anyways.
You know, I had a thought the other day. I'm reading a book about like how to think like Socrates. It's not an intellectual book. It's kind of like a self-help book. I got it for free. It's going to stay in Boston, even if I finish it or not. But one of the things like the author says like definition of flourishing, and I was like, the first thing came to my mind, page count. That's like, you know, how many pages I'm able to do, because it was so hard to do the pages in the beginning. Like I took 3 years to do like the first 10 pages because I was figuring out the style. I think it's interesting when we talk about comics and you go, where do we fit and why is it comics for adults? Thinking about any other medium, like if you think about TV series, there's no question that, for instance, how attached to genre do you have to be in a TV series? Like, you know, because like both of your comics, like also thinking about the episodic thing, reminds me of like a TV series. So nobody is asking what genre. You know what I think we're doing? We're doing kind of like what Nathan Fielder did with that. You know, like the one that is fiction with Emma. Oh, I forgot her name.
The Curse.
The Curse. You know, it's like it defines genre, but nobody's questioning whether it's for kids or adults. Or like Severance, is that only science fiction? It really isn't, you know? Like, so I think in TV we have examples of what we're doing that are easier to access than, I don't know. I kind of try to put it to other, like, you know, like, is it like the like art movies? Because I used to say art comics, and actually now I just say good comics. Yeah. Sorry, that's my category. But
yeah, I mean, genre is fascinating, and you know, it's like not really like I would always have thought of mysteries as kind of the most grown up of the genres. I don't know why. I mean, science, I guess, or like mystery writing was always the best writing quality, so it seemed like it was the most like mature or smart, but then there's like Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and so that doesn't really hold up. But yeah, I mean, I love genre, and it's nothing against genre, but there's some line where you cross, I think, where you're not dictated by the genre. You're using the genre and playing with the genre and transforming the genre based on what you want to do with it, and it kind of leaves, I guess, the expectation that most genre readers would have.
Yes, I agree with that a lot. I think that is definitely something that comics gives you the space to do, right? Like, I think in my own work, people are like, oh, you should call it noir, you should call it a mystery, you should call it historical fiction, and I don't really feel like it's any of those things fully, and people who read those genres will tell me like, oh, well, it kind of did that, and I'm like, yeah, because I'm not just trying to be that thing, right? Like, comics has given me the ability to say, oh, well, I like this aspect of this genre, but for me, this story becomes more interesting and inventive if these characters now have like an 8-page heart-to-heart serious discussion that you wouldn't really find in some of these other like mystery genres necessarily, right? But yeah, I think that comics definitely creates that space for that sort of genre defying.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's sort of like the difference between like indie comics and like, you know, as I like Chris's word of calling it art comics or good comics, and more mainstream, like even with like a book publisher or something. Because I've been, last year I was like querying agents with a pitch, and like I knew that like, you know, a grown-up graphic novel would be harder to pitch because they're really only interested in kids stuff. And actually there was an agent who reached out to me out of the blue and spent the whole call telling me that I should have been working on kids graphic novels instead. And I was like, I didn't even query you. You reached out to me, my guy. And yeah, I'm not gonna name names because he's very good at what he does. Like, he knows the market. But I'm not interested in the market. But anyway, and then I did end up working with an agent for a while on this pitch, and it's sort of about a 20-something like working at a bookstore, and it's like a little bit of a coming-of-age story. It's a little bit of a rom-com because he like matches with his college crush on a dating app, and of course that goes really well. It's about him like figuring out like who he is in his 20s and like what he wants to do. And the agent that I had been working with was like, well, like Liam, it's like a little bit of a coming-of-age story, it's a little bit of a rom-com, it's a little bit of a workplace comedy, and you need to pick one of those. And I was like, but I don't want to, because like I want it to be all of them. And yeah, anyway, which is to say, I think like more mainstream book publishing, like it is, and like book publishing and comics publishing is much more interested in putting your book like into a box and like into a specific genre. And like even if you look at like copy on I was like on like First Second's upcoming catalog the other day, and they have this new like gay teen rom-com that's like they're publishing a webcomic called Tripping Over You, and like the copy is like great for fans of Heartstopper, and it's like there's like you have to compare it to something else in order for it to get published, which is like such a barrier of entry, and especially if you're not already thinking like that, and especially if you don't want to think like that.
Yeah, and I think that we're all like doing this in the realm of self-publishing. Like, could it exist? Could these stories exist as they are in a realm larger than self-publishing? And right now the answer is no. And it's for the things that you mentioned. It's just the market is very heavily for young readers right now, and that's great. I don't want to disparage that at all. I have friends that are thriving in that, and it's amazing. And I think overall it's really good for comics, absolutely. And I think that the generation that's growing up with the stuff for young readers and the stuff for YA, they're tapped into comics in a way that even I wasn't at their age. the question then becomes is like, where do those readers go?
I do want to say one thing, that if you're authentic to yourself and you do it your way, regardless, one of the most successful cartoonists that is here is Sam Zabo, that does whatever they want. You know what I mean? Like, and it gets attention, and it gets like, so I kind of think a little bit, it's because it's a cheap thing for us to produce, we have the freedom to go places and get weird. Like here, the book here, that is that horrible movie with Tom Hanks. Do you guys watch the Polar Express? And it makes you nervous. So this is like Tom Hanks, virtual, like whatever, CGI Tom Hanks, the entire thing. Anyway, but it's based out of something that came out in Raw or Blab. I don't remember if it was like one of those magazines, but it's a comic that was very weird. It was just this house and just these little panels. I don't know if you ever saw it. And that's the guy who got the movie deal. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like if you're authentic to what you're doing and you let your thing go all the way and do whatever the fuck you want, you have a better chance of success. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for us, like,
but I mean,
trying to negotiate, like, how to make a living, but
like, so we're waiting for the next movie deal? I mean, is that what you're saying? Like, well, I don't understand. Like,
no, I think you're not waiting for the movie deal, but maybe you're waiting for opportunities in the comics where maybe it won't pay all your bills, but you'll get a paid trip to Angoulême. I don't know. Or you're going to get like a international market. Did anybody here read Crash Site by Nathan Caudry? So this is a guy, this is one of the weirdest comics ever made. It is. He's a genius. He's kind of giving up comic because of the page count. It's kind of sad. But it has been published in Brazil, he got international deals because his work is so unique. Yeah. And it's not for everybody. It really isn't. You know, but like Simon Hanselman, not for everybody. But they're like, I don't know how well they're paying their bills, but they're paying their bills. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm trying to think, where do we like go from, you know, this place of self-expression and finding our readership? You know, maybe it's a global readership. I don't know.
Right. We were talking before. I mean, I think a lot of this sort of pops into my head from looking at French comics specifically. I mean, manga is a whole other. That's just. But when you go, you know, and you look at French comics, and bande dessinée is more like TV, you know, like high-end TV or low-end TV, and movies here. It's like. All genres are covered. It seems like, I don't really know what the readership is there, but it looks like, you know, the kind of things that we're talking about are mainstream published and get into bookstores and successful. And it's like, oh, if only was that here.
And subsidized by the government too. Which
I was gonna say that, Cris. Damn you. No, I'm one of my. So I actually work in publishing as a children's book designer. One of my coworkers is a graphic novelist. She's had a few graphic novels published, and she is originally from France. And we spend so much time talking about how like the French government like actually invests in art and subsidizes like art, and that is why like there is such a proliferation of great graphic novels in France, and we just do not have that infrastructure in the United States. It was something, and like don't quote me on this because like I don't, like we had this conversation like 2 years ago, but it's something like if you work in animation for half of the year in France, you like still get your salary for the second half of the year. And so like a lot of animators will spend the second half of the year just working on graphic novels because they still have like that safety net like of their animation salary. And yeah, we don't have programs like that in the U.S. We're just sort of told to fend for ourselves.
But I think
it's drawn quarterly.
Yeah, I think it's cultural too, because I mean, and all that is really great. But I feel like the audience for grown-up comics in France sort of developed in the 60s and 70s, and you know now, and at some point the government picked up on it. But I feel like something in the water. You know, made those readers more open to stuff that just, it's really hard in America to you know, still, you know, we feel like, how could that possibly be? But people say, graphic novel, what is that? Or, you know.
Yeah, you have those long traditions
Yeah.
in Japan. Japan, they had like a comic scare, but it was short-lived. It wasn't like the comic scare that came about in the U.S. that brought about the code. And so that really kind of broke things in this country, and to some degree, to a large degree, you know, we're still living that. But I think, and you can kind of see that, I think, with every sort of agent query that goes out, and and looking at the current way that comics are funded and distributed, you know, that you can you know, run a thread, you know, to that. It can't, like, I don't think it can all be blamed on that. You know, I think where we go and how we distribute our comics is a really important conversation, and like where we go from here, because the pool is really small for comics for the adult market for distribution, and you know, Drawn and Quarterly is able to get that government subsidy. I don't know the facts about it, but you know, the artist gets paid, Drawn and Quarterly gets paid from the government, and it works. Nothing like that exists in this country. There's a real lack of institutional support for comics, and academia is great, but it's kind of late to the game. That there's still comics courses are still few and far in between, and they only really, you know, began to thrive. They only really began to enter like course catalogs about 20 years ago. And then, you know, still there's you know, in certain colleges, I'm sure in BU there's maybe like 10 or so. In smaller colleges, like where I teach, there's 1 or 2. So I mean, it's a long way to go. And then, like, where does academia like tell people to go? I tell all my students to go into YA comics, you know, because that's where the money is right now.
I do want to talk a little bit about the readers, because, for instance, like we have like a tiny, Milwaukee is like a 1 million city people, but it's a city that is not super known for its arts. It has like a thriving art, but it's like right by Chicago. We have a problem of bleeding. Our artists all move out of Milwaukee and go to bigger places, you know. But we had, for instance, this year, a Love and Rockets book club. We had people driving from Madison an hour every month just to come talk about Love and Rockets. Not even like, and like so this has been such an experiment to have this store there, to see all these people that learned to read comics in the 90s, and then you have another generation that learned to read, and I'm just talking about good comics now, right? But like that, learned to read comics in the 70s, like, you know, so you have like those older people, they come in and know exactly what they're gonna ask for, and they're all reading the new stuff. They'll come in and go like, do you have the new World War III? You know, if it's an older person. If it's a younger person, they'll go like, hey, do you have the new pee pee poo poo? They're reading, you know, which is great, right? But like they're reading the stuff that's coming out now. It's kind of amazing. Like so I think I've always thought this in a little way. We do something that is so specific that we need to find these people in these little places, you know? And the internet should be a way to reach people, but like really support your local bookstore. Go to your local bookstore and say like, hey, can we have like a zine session here? Like that's becoming more and more common in comic book stores, you know? So I don't know, I think it's something, I was surprised to see how many people, you know?
I'm really glad, and I love that I can say this in a panel. I'm really glad that you brought up pee pee poo poo, because Carolyn Cash is really doing something really great in adult comics right now, and really, really smart. So their work is here at the Silver Sprocket table, and I like. They know their comics history, and they know their audience, and I think that, you know, if you have that, you have a leg up, I think. You know, having kind of wishy-washy ideas about who your audience might be isn't going to help your comics. And I think you can look to people like Carolyn Cash, which is very exciting because, you know, they're young and just like...
Carolyn does whatever she wants.
Yeah.
She does whatever she wants.
They want to take the comics world by storm.
Whatever... You know, the name of the comic is Pee Pee Poo Poo. You know, there's no focus group that told them like, oh, this is a good way to go. We're actually thinking, you know, like it's better.
Focus
No.
grouped, actually. That was a marketing survey. And
Yeah, there was a marketing survey.
It was amazing. Amazing. You got to get that marketing company.
They got their own algorithm.
So this is good because obviously, I don't think we've complained too much about the market, but it's good to have some upbeat stuff. So if anyone wants to just talk about like some good things that happened, you know, because of the kind of work that you're doing, some good experiences or something that worked, you know, and sort of start to go out on that note. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to comment on a point earlier, like, what do we tell people who get a degree in comics as someone who got a degree in comics? And I think it's also to, like, come to places like this, right? Like, MICE is a really cool event in the sense that there's all these different artists doing all different kinds of stuff, doing what they want, coming here and selling their books directly to people, right? Like, you're cutting out so many of the middlemen in that kind of more traditional way of publishing. And I think that there are so many different shows across the states and different events, like the events at Lion's Tooth and stuff like that, where you bring people together and you just do this stuff, right? And maybe those groups are small, maybe those groups are big, right? But I think that having done a decent amount of shows this year, like, it's been really amazing to see people come together to experience zines and like to see people who are like, oh, I love comics and zines and like I look forward to, like, for example, Milwaukee Zine Fest, I look forward to it every year. And then people are like, I just walked in here, this is amazing, what's going on, right? Like those, both of those people give me so much like hope and joy about comics and about the future, because like there are people who are looking for this stuff and some of them don't even know it yet. So that's my hopeful note.
And for the present, because you're experiencing it in the present. So I think
and my hopefulness for this exact moment. Everyone in the vendor hall, I'm hoping for you.
Because I think kind of looking forward to when will they catch on? They'll catch on soon. When this generation grows up, they'll all be ready. But you know, it's like, yeah, what we have now, not too bad.
I want to hang on that like a little bit, because I think I read an article the other day that said that personal contact is a luxury item now. And having a conversation with a real human being that you have things in common with, it's a luxury item. So when we're doing things like this, and we get kind of exhausted of like, I'm like pitching, you know. I go, take it out of my hands, please. Like, you know, but like it is that contact and having somebody say like, oh, I like that band that I saw in the t-shirt of the person in your comic or whatever, you know, that is a luxury item, and people pay good money for that, and so we can grow communities like this because because there's not as many, we can lure people in to do it. I just wanted to like say that.
Okay, we have like 10 minutes left. We can do questions from the audience. We have a microphone. We have a question. We're all set.
I can probably talk loud enough without it, but yeah, I'll talk loud enough. So I'm just curious, I'm just doing it so I can project. Like yesterday I was at ARIA, which is like an independent Rhode Island author like expo. And one of the things that they were saying as like prose writers is like, I know Amazon is like evil, but like for them to get their work out, Amazon has like a traditional publishing, but also like they can do the self-publishing, and I guess like it's opened up a market for them. So I'm curious if kind of you guys have dabbled in that, or if that's something for even like comics, because obviously Amazon reaches a very wide, and there's less like gatekeeping with the traditional model. So I'm just curious if like your experience, if you guys have experience.
I don't think it works for comics because the way that print on demand works, it's like you don't have a lot of control of what the book's gonna be. It's a lot of fun to get books from Amazon for the bookstore because sometimes there's missing a whole chapter. Sometimes it's upside down. So, and I understand self-published people wanting to do that, but I think it's a horrible compromise. I think they would do much better if they went to their local bookstore and to bookstores and talked one-on-one and sent books, and you know, but I understand it's ubiquitous.
Oh, Yeah, I think digital avenues might be a little better. We were all on a call together before this, and Tumblr came up with regard to comics, and like 10 or 15 years ago, it was like a place where comics, you know, really thrived, and where creators found an audience, and it was really great. And of course, it died. It doesn't work that way anymore. But you know, webtoons is a new kind of recently new kind of phenomenon, and you know, most people in South Korea, that's how they exclusively read their comics. I think reformatting for myself personally for a webtoon presents challenges, because I've always designed for the page and not necessarily for the individual panel, and how to draw out those kind of moments and for the infinite scroll. But I'm not ruling it out, and I think it might be right for the right project for me. So yeah, I don't know necessarily that like printing, direct printing or print on demand has never really, like, you know,
hard for images.
Yeah, I
think
echo
it's a
that.
technical thing.
I think because we're just so tuned into a lot of the details about printing, and we just want to get like, so we want to be hands-on and like get all those details right, that to just remove that, and not, if you're working outside of a professional like publishing house and they take care of all that with their offset printing, expenses of overseas offset printing, then great. But like if you're doing a print on demand where they're doing, like, they're churning this out, you know, somewhere that you don't know, and you don't know what the end product is going to look like, you know, that's not so great, especially if attention to detail is important, which it is, I think, to all of us.
Another question? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for the time. I was thinking about, you know, we all start as genre readers at some point, right? Like, there's not a lot of revolutionary children's, like, 8-year-old comics. So I was wondering if, for each of you, you have a definitive moment or a story you remember that you were allowed to break genre rules, or a piece of art that really inspired you, like, oh, I don't have to do it the way that everyone else in the genre does.
Yeah, for me, that book was Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore, which is this, like, I mean, it's by a straight man, but it's about, like, it's this long, winding, like, will they, won't they romance between this, like, explicitly lesbian main character and her seemingly straight best friend, from like the 90s through the 2000s, and it spans every fucking genre. It starts out as like a silly little rom-com, and then it turns out that Kachu, the main character, has a dark past as a lesbian sex worker, maybe assassin, who's to say, and it becomes a crime story, and then after it's a crime story, it becomes like a slice of life comedy about a 30-something artist trying to find her way in this crazy world, and it's just like, it spans every genre. Everything happens, and then eventually, like, he keeps making more comics, and they all allegedly take place in the same universe, including this zombie comic, Rachel Rising, and then he had them all cross over in like a big and I'm like, why are the characters from Strangers in Paradise helping to avoid the apocalypse? Like, what is going on? I mean, the later stuff isn't great, but but the original Strangers in Paradise, and I mean, he has a very unique point of view and a very unique voice, and I think it's very ambitious, like, regardless of how successful, like, the later crossover ultimately was. But yeah, Strangers in Paradise breaks every genre convention, like, masterpiece, chef kiss. There's some male gazy stuff in it that is, like, a little outdated, and, like, I think now both of the characters would be considered bisexual, but at the time that wasn't really in the lexicon. It, like, started in the early 90s and ended in, like, 2008. So it was like, is she straight or is she a lesbian, the whole time? But it's fantastic. It's very nuanced, and the way that he draws women's bodies is also, like, very naturalistic. Like, they don't look like how men drew female superheroes at the time. And yeah, that was it for me.
I want to talk about Love and Rockets because you brought that up. I'm gonna go with a counter. But the Love and Rockets for me was when I was little. I got an Archie comics that were not published in Brazil, and I didn't know what they were saying. because it was in English. So I was like reading it, and I made the stories up in my mind, and my stories were awesome. People were having sex and blah, blah, blah. And then when I finally read, I'm like, what? They're both like fighting for this dude? You know, what is this about? And then Love and Rockets got published in Brazil, and I was like, this is what I thought Archie comics were like. I thought they were all like punk rock and like, you know, and they were girlfriends and like, so Love and Rockets for me on the same vein of like an inhabitable universe that, you know, and that was the first comic I ever saw a trans man. It's not even like Monica, Mark, you know, it's not even like, oh, I went to see Mark, you know, nah, Monica. And it was not addressed as like, this is the main thing. It was just something that happened, you know? So that, like, for me, is like character forming. It's a great, and then still going. Now they're in menopause, which I don't identify with at all.
and when Jaime Hernandez actually drew Archie, that was just like, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. There's a comic now called Santos Sisters. I don't know if you guys know about this comic. It's Greg and Fake. Their email is like PF Changs with a Z. When we got like for the store, like whoever this person is, I want their comics in the store just because of this. But they do the thing they found out. Not a lot of Archie didn't have a lot of artists. So Greg Petrie trained himself to do Archie style, and then he never got the job. But then he started his own comic. With his Latina superheroes, yeah.
Either of you two want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I have been trying to think of every comic I've ever read in my life, so it's been a little overwhelming. But I wanted to shout out two of them. One is a comic by a person, I'm going to mispronounce their last name, called Loden Krudenegger. I got it 2017. I don't think they make comics anymore, but it's called like Lots of Fun, and it was this comic about a tree branch and an onion, and they have lots of fun, but all of them end with, I think, the onion being killed in kind of horrific ways by the tree branch. And I had never seen anything like it when I was 17 years old. I was like, this is the craziest thing on earth. And so that was definitely like oh wow, comics don't even have, like, the premise is perhaps not even as concrete as what I'm describing now. And the other one that this does feel very much in a genre, but I feel like reading the complete Dykes to Watch Out For, I was like, oh, like really, there was no one doing stuff like that exactly before this happened. And Bechdel was like, I'm just gonna do this, right? And that feels very empowering within the comic, and you know, all of the weird petty drama the characters have in the comic is informational both to my work and my personal life. So I want to give that one a shout out as well.
Yeah, for me, like many people, my entry point into comics was superheroes, and so I'd have to say that Frank Miller's Dark Knight, and I'm confused with the name of that comic because of the Dark Knight movies. The Dark Knight Strikes Again.
Dark Knight Returns.
The Dark Knight, yeah. So the Dark Knight comic by Frank Miller, just a lot of visual invention. I love like really good tension between text and image. And there's just really crazy, bonkers like pages going on where you have like this underlying image beneath, where like you have the hulking, massive, aged Batman figure, and then you have like these TV screens that are showing you what's going on simultaneously as Gotham is burning, and then you have like Robin in the massive Batmobile that's like a tank careening through the streets. So you have all this simultaneity going on, and that was like really eye-opening for me as a young person reading that for the first time. Like, whoa, you know, like what am I watching here? Like this is great. And then Batman Year One by David Mazzucchelli, which the artist edition just came out this past summer, and I jumped on that, and I love so much about that story, like the pacing and the art, and it's just so masterfully crafted, and it's short. The individual issues, it was serialized over 4 issues, and the stories themselves, the individual issues are very short, and it's a short work, but it just really clued me in as to like how impactful you could be in such a short page count, and it's kind of what I'm aspiring to with Hacienda.
Thanks, everyone. I think our time is up, so I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. Really appreciate everyone here, and go find some more great comics. Go buy their comics. Really good.